Let's talk about the SEC. Okay, going into this week, what did we learn? We learned that Georgia struggled mightily on offense in the first half of their game against Arkansas, but their defense held up. And in the second half, they got it figured out, and they put some points on the board and left no doubt. And listen, week one is going to be that stage where everyone figures out what's going on, right? Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, all had some Auburn, Kentucky. Everybody kind of struggled a little bit to start the game and got a little bit of the rust off, right? They got the kinks worked out, and now we start to get into, okay, we've played a game. We got that under our belt. What do we have, and what do we need to work on? So Georgia this week, listen, no rest for the weary. They got number 7 Auburn coming into town, and it's not going to be an easy game. It is not going to be an easy game. Georgia, again, struggled on offense in that first game against Arkansas. Again, found their footing in the second half, but Auburn coming in, and they looked pretty darn good last week, especially in the second half. After some stuff, little bit adjustments at halftime, you saw Bo Nix come out and really played well in that second half against a Kentucky team that I think is going to surprise a lot of people as well. Georgia's favored right here at -6.5. I don't know that the whole JT Daniels thing is going to work out in Georgia, so we'll see. We will see. But I'm thinking that Auburn's going to come into Georgia here. I think they're going to win this game, folks, outright. I'm picking Auburn to go over Georgia between the hedges. Then we have Texas A&M at number 2, Alabama. Now, Texas A&M struggling would be an understatement as to what happened to their offense last week. They are a complete dumpster fire on offense. If Jesus himself came down, if he could help anything on that offensive side, they were just plain bad. And Jimbo, it doesn't even look like Jimbo and company are really trying to push the ball down the field like you've seen them do in the past. At Texas A&M, it looks very conservative, very tight. And the last thing you want to do going into a game at, number 2 Alabama is be very conservative on your play calling and, sticking to 15-and-in short routes, running the football. It's not going to work. It is not going to work against Saban's defense. So, listen, it's SEC football. Anything can happen, but I don't see Texas A&M rolling into Alabama and making this thing competitive. Mac Jones looked pretty good last week against Missouri. Now, in that second half, Missouri started to put some things together, and we're going to talk about that at length when we talk about the good old Tennessee Volunteers. But I don't think it's going to go well for A&M. They're -15 at Alabama. I think it's going to be worse. I say take the -17. I say take that because it could be a 20-point plus beating here from Alabama at home. Now, I do want to say this. Home field advantage doesn't mean everything. Obviously, we're in 2020 when COVID-19 is running rampant and there's not as many fans in the stands, but I don't think it really matters for Texas A&M. Alabama could be playing on their home field, the parking lot, a dirt road. It doesn't matter. They're winning that game by +20 in my opinion. All right, then we have South Carolina going to number 3 Florida. Florida's defense didn't look great against Lane Kiffin's offense and Ole Miss last week. But to be fair, Lane Kiffin's going to do that to a lot of people in the SEC. Ole Miss is going to put some points on the board. But you look across, and South Carolina doesn't have that firepower. We saw it against Tennessee. They struggled to move the football, and they moved it in spurts. They would have drives where they moved it pretty consistently, and then they would sputter out and go 3 and out for 2 or 3 drives straight. Then they come back and move the ball 2 or 3 drives straight, 3 and out. So they're not consistent on the offensive end. They have Shi Smith, who is a great playmaker. The quarterback, Colin Hill, makes some good throws here and there, but I think Florida's defense is going to get back on track this week. They're a -17.5. I would say, yeah. I'd say Florida wins by 20+ in this game too. Some weapons they have on the outside are definitely going to be the factor for Florida on offense. But South Carolina defensively, I don't think they're going to stop this offense many times. And offensively, they're too inconsistent to score anything +30, in my opinion. So I think Florida runs away with this. Like, they would need to score 35 at least to be in this game with Florida because Trask just can play on the offensive side. Now, Florida's defense, again, didn't look great, but I don't think they have the offensive firepower to either put a long drive together consistently to hold that offense from Florida off or to get into an absolute gun show with Florida down the stretch. I don't think they're gonna do that. So I think Florida, they win big. They win 20+. All right, Arkansas at number 16, Mississippi State. I'm kind of surprised that Mississippi State only got to number 16 last week. That win they had in LSU was massive. Again, home field's not what it should be, but that's still a huge win for Mike Leach in his first game at Mississippi State. But we have a former Florida quarterback in Felipe Franks leading the Arkansas Razorbacks into town. This is going to be another slaughter fest, folks. I'm telling you, at the top of the SEC, from the top to the bottom, there's a huge disparity. And to add on to that, Mississippi State, a lot of these teams, Tennessee included, have shown some rust on especially the offensive side and defensive for some teams as well. But most of these teams have shown a lot of rust and an inability to be consistent or get going at all. Mississippi State has been like, nah, fam, we good. Turn the booster jets on because we're going to the flipping moon. And they put points on the board in bunches against an LSU defense that hasn't allowed that many yards in I don't know how long. Because, to be fair, yes, Mike Leach is a genius in what he does on the offensive side, but you got to have the players to do it. And this KJ Costello kid has been diamond it up left and right. I mean, the underneath crossing routes were great, but down the field he was making great plays. I went back and watched a couple of those plays down the field, and one, the skill guys on the outside were just not only flat out outrunning some of these LSU defenders, but getting good get-offs off the line, making sure they weren't jammed, finding pockets deep down the field. I mean, making great catches and doing something with it afterward. Mississippi State is a minus 18 here. I'm not going to say they win this game by 18 or more. I think this is a 14-point game. I still think they get it done. I think Arkansas's offense shows a little bit more promise in this game, and Mississippi State's defense, we're yet to see how good they really are. LSU's offense, we don't know how great they are either. So I think Arkansas puts some points up. Mississippi State minus 18 might be a little too much. They're still going to win this game big. I just don't know if it's going to be 20 plus, 25 plus. I have no idea. But I still take Mississippi State by at least 2 touchdowns in this game. Moving on to LSU at Vanderbilt. Now listen, Vanderbilt, they're getting the little brother treatment, and they usually get that from Tennessee, but they're getting it from the SEC schedule makers because not only do they go from Texas A&M, number 12 in the nation, and they play their hearts out in that game, and they get close but just can't close the door, can't seal a deal in that game. Now they get an LSU team with a pissed-off Ed Orgeron coming into town, and I don't think they want any part of that. This game, LSU's minus 20.5. This is a 21-point LSU favor here, and I'm listening. That's not crazy. LSU can win this by 3 touchdowns easily. But listen, Vanderbilt, they played well defensively. They could not get anything going on the offensive side. It was a 17-12 game against Texas A&M. I don't expect them to get anything started. I think LSU comes out fired up and ready to prove a point. I think that LSU wins this big. I think Miles Brennan gets back on track here. I'm not sure if he's all that Joe Burrow was to LSU. I don't think he could even come close to that. And I think LSU fans came into this season hoping that he would have some sort of that ability. I think there needs to be a little bit of a comeback to earth moment for LSU fans there. But Miles Brennan's going to have himself a game here. I don't doubt that. Vanderbilt is they got the worst end of this to start the year, and it's going to be ugly. A minus 20.5. I'd say that. I don't know. I don't think LSU gets a 21. I don't think they get 3 touchdowns here. I think that at most they're at that solid 20 number, or even a 17-point victory. But it's not going to be close. The score might be close as Vanderbilt maybe makes some points up in the end, but this isn't going to be a close game. LSU's going to walk in, wreck everyone, and leave. Shout out Roman Reigns for the reference. But yes, they're gonna come into town, take Vanderbilt's lunch money, and leave promptly. LSU big. And now look at this. We have Ole Miss at Kentucky. Now, this is interesting, guys. This is interesting because Ole Miss is the dog here. And I'm so confused as to why that is. Now, Kentucky had a decent showing against Auburn. They had a decent showing. That can't be disputed. But their defense didn't play well in that second half. Now, granted, neither did Ole Miss, but Florida they have a great offense. They have a top-tier level offense. And Ole Miss scored at will. That game, they could have put 40 points on the board if not for a drop touchdown literally at the last second of the game. A 6.5-point favorite here for Kentucky, but I think it goes the other way. I think Ole Miss comes into Kentucky and leaves with a win. And I'd say they win by more than a touchdown. Listen, on the offensive side, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin are doing some things, and the SEC, we've seen it now. It works. The air raid works. The high-level passes work. You can throw it 60 times a game in the SEC, especially in 2020 when defenses haven't really got to scrimmage anyone. Just go out there and let it fly, and it's working so far. It worked against Florida. It worked against LSU. It's going to work here against Kentucky. Ole Miss, I would say by 2 touchdowns at least, and they leave Kentucky with a W.